this orange building here was a very famous Royal Peacock nightclub. And so back in the day of the 40s and 50s, Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, the Supremes, all the rhythm and blues and jazz performers of color would come to this. And it was like the Cotton Club or the Apollo Theater in New York.
For the day I break these chains, I'm bound for the life of the simple things.
Now, here in this district, all those performers could go into the front door and they could mingle wherever they wanted to. If they were in other areas of Atlanta, they had to go into the back door and have very restricted space. Because of that welcoming that they felt here on the street, this area got the nickname of the Sweet Auburn District because they felt a welcoming sweetness when they were here. And this big church here on our left is Big Bethel AME. It is the oldest African American church in Atlanta. It was actually built by slave owners for their slaves. I love the castle-like architecture of it, but the first one was built out of wood. Of course, it burned down when everything else burned down. And then it was the freed slaves after the war that built it out of the granite again so it would be able to stand forever. This great big red brick building over here that takes up the whole city block, it's called the Oddfellows Atrium. It was a very prominent office and business complex starting in the 1920s. And of course, everyone had the freedom of going in the front doors, mingling however they wanted to mingle. It was then vacant and kind of abandoned for many years. Now it's all being rebuilt again. So in another year or two, it's going to hopefully be a vibrant office and business center again. It's an exciting kind of renovating cycle of life that after 50 years, it was so significant what the Civil Rights Bill did. Now, and 50 years later, this area that by choice was abandoned, now by choice is all being revitalized out of the respect for what happened here. Okay. Now, we're going under this huge interstate, I-85-75. It's our big connecting interstate system. It was built in the 60s. And that also contributed to everybody wanting to get away from the construction of this great big highway. And you see the wall that it built between the residential side of Auburn Avenue to all the businesses, and all of that combined to just bring this whole neighborhood kind of down. So all this land to the right of us, and everything that we're going to be driving through in the next 20 minutes or so, is called the East Side neighborhood of Atlanta, because we're east of this big highway. And we call this our historic East Side because for us, you know, anything that's now almost 100 years old is historic. My British visitors that I had in the last tour, they just kept chuckling. Their mailboxes are older than, but you know, for us it's like, yay, we made it. We've got a historic East Side neighborhood. So everything is relative. It's all relative. But this land here on your right and on our left as we go up was just abandoned, ugly land. It just became the hood after 1965, just an undesirable neighborhood and ugly old houses. But the last 3 years, the city bought 8 acres on both sides of the street, and it has been created an urban garden. Nice. And it is a community garden that's such a great repurposing of unloved land. So you can rent a box and plant your own garden here. We still have a lot of room to grow here, but it has been so well supported by all of the community. A lot of restaurants have their organic vegetables growing here. School groups come, and especially for inner city kids that don't realize that vegetables didn't originate in a grocery store, this has just been a great repurposing of ugly old land that kind of looked like this. Greenhouses. It's organized by a national organization called CSA, Community Servicing Agriculture. And they are so well organized in how they have pulled this all together for us. So it's an exciting part of our urban renewal, and it leads us right up to the Martin Luther King site. That every city in the United States has an MLK Boulevard or Martin Luther King Drive, or something to honor Martin Luther King. We have 3 city blocks because he was our hometown leader. And Caroline, are you hearing me back there?
Yeah.
Are you okay? You'll yell at me if you can't hear me. Say yeah. I'm just making sure you're still back there. Okay. So we're headed into the historic district of Martin Luther King, and all of this, the museums and sites, they're all managed by our federal park rangers, and it's all free for you to come back and visit later on. Now this in front of us on the left is the Ebenezer Baptist Church. Very historic. It was Dr. King's just family church. His grandfather was a minister. He and his father were both co-pastors here. You can see his picture there on that poster. It is now a museum that you can go into, and it tells a lot of the historic events that happened in this church. So the new Ebenezer Baptist Church is across the street. It's over 6,000 members. But where you want to start your visit is in the visitor center to the right of it. That visitor center tells the story. It's a great museum, all about the civil rights movement in the South. Dr. King's leadership of it has a section dedicated to Mahatma Gandhi, who was his inspiration for the nonviolent protesting. And it's just really very well told, all about Dr. King's leadership. So that's in there. And then across the street is where Dr. King is buried. The white tomb that you can see kind of behind those people. No, you can't get out. Did you just ask if you could get out? Like, don't leave me. Don't leave me. Oh, okay. So, let me pull up and you can get around those people if you look back. Hang on a minute. What are they doing? Did somebody fall? Okay, so here you can see get a better shot of it. She is Nancy. So Dr. King was assassinated in 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. His body brought back to Atlanta, and then his wife Coretta Scott King died in 2006, and she is next to him in that tomb. But the whole tomb memorial is designed to look like the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., because that is where he gave the famous speech, "I have a dream." And you can hear him over the loudspeaker. When you walk back there, it's surrounded by a reflective pool, just like the Lincoln Memorial. It really gives you goosebumps. I mean, it's just very inspirational to hear. Okay, so now, if you look back, you can get a better view of what it looks. From the street, you just can't see it very well. But all the fountains that are back there. So you were singing in the church. Oh, we got to talk more about that in a minute. That's pretty cool.
It was the high school concert choir, and we did an exchange
from New York.
We did an exchange with a choir from Atlanta, and we sang inside that church. Yeah.
That's very neat. Okay, so now this block, I want you to notice these houses over here on the left. These are called shotgun homes, and they're very popular in the South because the front door opens up to the middle interior doors and out the back door. So a bullet would go straight through the doors. Now that's significant because before air conditioning, anything to get the breezes. If you'd open up the doors and the windows, you could get the breeze coming through. The mill workers, the cotton mill workers, the working class lived in these houses, and they've all been renovated from the early 1900s. And now some of the park rangers have their offices there. But I have my first little trivia question for you. See if you get this. These are called shotgun homes, but you notice some of them are duplexes. They're attached. What do you think we call?
Double barrel.
Hey, James, you got it right on. Good for you. So those are double barrel.
They have a lot of them in Houston.
Ah, okay. Now, this yellow house here on the right with the brown trim, this was where Dr. King was born in 1929, And he lived here until he was 12 years old. His grandparents also lived here. And then when he was 12, they moved about 2 or 3 miles away, and that house no longer exists. But you notice his house is much larger, has all of the brown trim on it, more stylish. He was a middle class to upper middle class family, very well educated. And all of the houses along this stretch of the street, were more middle class to upper class. So even though this Auburn Avenue was segregated, it was very economically diverse. There was a lot of prosperity, but of course, when everyone had the freedom to move elsewhere, they chose to do so. It all kind of fell into disrepair for many years. But the last 20 years has just been amazing that we have a sense of perspective. You know, with history, you always have to have a little bit of time to look back and say, this is something really special that happened in the city. The Civil Rights Bill, Dr. King's contribution to it, of course, has made this area become now a much more well-loved neighborhood. And because of the respect for what happened 50 years ago, it is the most popular in-town neighborhood that we've got. This old studioplex was a cotton bale warehouse, and now it's owned by artists that have their lofts upstairs and their studios on the ground floor. This part of the factory, it's all restaurants and nightclubs. This is such a fun play area. We have this old water tank here on the left that we've shored up so that it won't fall apart on us, because it's 100 years old. Yay, we finally got something. And even though it's an old, ugly old water tower, we celebrate that. And this whole area of the neighborhood that used to just be old factories, as you see, it is just a thriving neighborhood now. This old little tin warehouse, it's a pizza place, an ice cream. We have this beautiful art to decorate the old factory walls. You know, anything, instead of tearing the buildings down, we're decorating them, we're keeping them. But you see this path here, this is the coolest thing. I think Boston has one of these. This is called our Atlanta Beltline, and it was an obsolete railroad track that finally the city was able to get enough money to buy it a few years ago. And if you look to the right, you'll see what it is. They've dug up the track, and it's just still a path in progress. But on the left is the completed Beltline. It's going to be beautifully paved. It goes about 5 miles now up this way. It connects up to our Piedmont Park, but eventually it's going to make a 22-mile loop all around downtown, so that you'll be able to ride your bicycle all around downtown. It's just the coolest thing we've had. And everybody wants to live near the Beltline, and you want to walk and jog on the Beltline and eat by the Beltline. So this old area that was just long forgotten has been pumped full of this vitality from that Beltline growth. And this old factory is the coolest nightclub and restaurant area. It was a potbelly stove factory, but this is called the Krog Street Market now. And it's got a wonderful little upscale food court inside it, several sit-down restaurants. On the right is a very high-end steakhouse and a little nightclub at night. You know, all on this old beat-up factory that made potbelly stoves. And this is all brand new construction that just got finished last week, all residential. Okay, so now we're going to change gears. We're leaving the old 4th Ward, and we're going into the first suburb that was a planned suburb in the early 1900s, and it was built 2 miles from downtown, built for the very affluent, rich, wealthy, cream of the crop, and of course they were the white citizens on the other side of the railroad tracks, literally from the black neighborhood. And this red brick building here was the Inman Park Schoolhouse. And then when we had in the 1960s and early 70s, when all of our schools were integrated after the civil rights, that was too small. It just sat there empty for a while. They built a new school, and now it's condominiums. So we have a sense of repurposing. Instead of tearing down an old obsolete building, we're making some new use out of it, which is pretty cool. Okay, now everything that we're going to see in this neighborhood that we're headed to is part of a historic preservation site. And that means that you cannot tear any houses down. You can buy it and you can renovate it, you can decorate it, paint it however you want, but you cannot tear it down. And this is the oldest neighborhood we have in Atlanta. So, you know, you Bostonians, for us, this is so exciting. This big Victorian house is typical of what would have been all over this neighborhood 100 years ago. It was built with the Victorian style. Now that's a bed and breakfast that you can stay in, very popular. But the Victorian style was really great for the South, typical of Savannah and Charleston, all of the big southern cities, because of the wraparound porches and all of the windows that go from floor to ceiling. These Victorian, go all the way back. This neighborhood is as old as we've got because, of course, everything burned down in the Civil War. I had some visitors earlier, and they'd just come from Charleston, and they were like, oh my goodness, you know, this is nothing compared to that. But Charleston didn't get burned down. Charleston was around during the Revolutionary War, and then they built from there. So we're pretty excited that this is our one and only historic neighborhood. But I want you to see this little black column here with the gold around the trim and the little gas light. That is a fun curiosity. It's been here for over 100 years. And we'll see if you get my next trivia question. You got my double barrel one. This was here before electricity and before the automobile. And it was used up until the 1920s, and then it was not used anymore. It was A, a bathroom, or B, a mailbox, or C, a jail. What's your guess? A what? A jail? You were right. You got it.
I was gonna say, yeah.
It was a jail. It was called a lockup box. And there were about 6 or 7 of them around the city. This is the only one that remains. So before the police were on foot, if you were misbehaving in this very affluent neighborhood, you would be put in that box, and they would turn the gas light on, and you would wait for the paddy wagon to make his rounds at night and take you back downtown to jail. Now, all the little houses that are here are probably built in the 40s or 50s, but they're still part of that whole historic plan. And this house here on the right, the red chimney said 1890. I went up too far. But this is the first, probably the oldest in the neighborhood that was built. And we call her the Painted Lady for obvious reasons. But all the balconies and all the little porches and the gingerbread is just so wonderful.
Is it private residence?
Yes, private residence. So all of this neighborhood is all privately owned. Everybody lovingly, this one was also another one of the early 1900s. I wish they'd paint a little more though. You don't notice, look at all that trim. The workmanship on that is so amazing, but you don't notice it as much when it's all white. But they didn't ask me.
Hi there, everybody. So Catalina and her mom and I were up here on the top of the Westin Hotel on the 172nd floor, enjoying the Revolving restaurant here. We're just gonna have a quick margarita and head on our way out. But every city I am in, I like to see the top of the highest building that allows for just regular civilians to get to peer out, and it's usually these revolving restaurants that are a nice little thing. Get out there, connect with people, live your big story.
Make sure you do something every single day to reduce road sex.
Peace, guys.
Without you, my friend, and I tell you all about it when I see you again. We come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you